Hey everybody, Jack Stan Johnny here. This is the third installment of the SV650 rebuild. So, first off, I had done a lot of recording, getting the swing arm and the chain on the bike, cleaning and repacking the bearings and the swing arm and all that stuff. And the video editing software that I have, I use Avid Media Composer because it's free, or at least I was using it. It's also a huge pain in the ass, so I kind of scrapped all that. Main points to take away: basically, if you're gonna tear the bike apart and put it back together, again, this is probably something that goes without saying, but clean up everything really well. And if you're already going to have it apart, you might as well clean the bearings out and inspect them and everything. The other thing is the swing arm pivot bolt right here. It uses a kind of proprietary castle nut, and same thing with a couple other spots on the frame. To save a lot of money, instead of buying a Suzuki specialty tool, which is I'm going to show you in a minute, they're extremely expensive. It's been a long time since I even looked into it, but you can build your own, and I'm going to show you a couple right now. So these are a couple of sockets that have been modified, with a grinder, a cutting wheel. It takes some time, but you can save a lot of money. At least one of these, I believe this guy here, is a Duralast, so it came from AutoZone, and it was probably $5 or $6, as opposed to, I want to say, $40 or more per socket. I have 3 or 4 of these in different sizes for different parts in the frame, and they fit into place thusly. A lot of guys that mess with their SVs know to do this, and on certain forums like SV Rider, you can probably borrow a set from somebody. So keep that in mind. The other thing I want to talk about is the rear suspension. So when I first started really digging into this bike, it was, man, 7 years ago or more. One of the big things I did for the suspension was a different rear shock. This is from a Kawasaki ZX-10R. I cannot remember the year. I want to say it's a 2003. Certain other models, and this information is available all over the internet. The reservoir sits at a different angle and doesn't really work without more modification, mainly shimming the inner fender liner where the battery goes. But they can also work. I believe a lot of people will say that this is probably too much for this bike, and they would go with an early 2000s Kawasaki 636 or a ZX6 rear shock, but at the time this seemed like the way to go, and I'm not going to spend any more money buying another shock, so I'm going to see how this works. The other thing is the rear suspension linkage, or dog bones. So here is a stock dog bone, and it's made of steel, and it's fairly heavy. You're going to, of course, have 2 of these, one for each side. What I had on the bike up until the crash were these aluminum ones that were significantly shorter, and what I have here are another pair of aluminum dog bones that are slightly longer than this, but a little shorter than this. It's right in between. And I'm going to try and go with these. So the way it works, and this is setting aside all of the, the big can of worms of suspension geometry and all that stuff. This is a cheap way to raise or lower your bike. It has worked for me fine. The rear suspension geometry is not why I crashed. So, speaking just as straight line as I possibly can, with dog bones, the shorter the dog bone, the more it's going to raise your bike. The longer the dog bone, the more it's going to lower your bike to the ground. That's the subframe and seat, like the tail section, to the ground. So when I use these shorter ones, it's because I wanted to raise up the rear of the bike considerably. For my height, 6'1", and just to kind of give it a more aggressive look and just make it feel and look like a bigger bike. I know that sounds pretty stupid to some of y'all, but it is what it is, man. So I'm gonna go with these in between. Since I'm on a prosthetic leg now, I want to try to get this thing a little bit lower to the ground while still feeling comfortable in the seat. I'm just going to try it out because having my left leg, my prosthesis, bent too much, the socket, the carbon fiber socket, if you can, imagine that digging into your hip bone and everything while you're trying to ride. It's not very, very comfortable. So this is the stock linkage. Try and get these holes lined up here. You can see how much shorter the one I was running is, and then the new linkage is somewhere in between. It's about halfway. So it's a good compromise, and these being aluminum, they're so much lighter than the stock ones. I know it's not a crazy weight savings, but I am trying to save as much weight as I can on the bike because I'm gonna essentially be coming to a stop and holding this thing up with just my right leg. So it needs to be as light as possible. And no, I refuse to lose weight. Also, I think I'm going to install the rear suspension and possibly the rear wheel before I put the engine in. They weigh less than the engine. Although if I were to put the engine in now, it would be a lot easier because I could just kind of pick up the entire frame. But I think putting in the rear wheel and suspension and everything will get it lined up better, and I'll just kind of finagle the jack to get it in place. In the meantime, I do want to continue to work on the bike, and I'm going to need help from a friend to get the engine in position. I've done this a couple times before by myself, and it just seems to be more and more sketchy every time I do it alone. So I better play it safe because I don't have any more engines to put in this thing. And lastly, I guess I should probably talk about my plans for the bike and what else is going to be done to it. So I've got everything kind of together here for the most part. I need to, you know what? I'm gonna grab something. I'll be right back. Welcome to Garage. Just kidding. All right. So, I have a list here of stuff that I need to do on the bike, things I need to buy for the bike, and some special things I need to build and do for the bike. So some of the things I want to try, I have a KTM I think it's a 690 Super Duke headlight that I was running, that I'm probably not going to run anymore. I'm going to try to do like maybe a number plate and an offset headlight kind of thing. I just love the way that looks. Maybe have them stacked like projectors, or maybe just do a bucket. So I got to figure out how that's going to work with mounting the headlight and all that stuff. I've also got these Coso gauges that I never installed because the wiring was a mess, but now Coso makes a plug-and-play kit. The Clicktronic shifter, of course. Let's see. Hand-operated side stand. So I've got a few different side stands, and I can't remember which one is for the SV. I needed one that was a little bit longer. There's another one here. So what I need to try to figure out how to do is, I was originally thinking it would be real slick to use some kind of push button and like a piston, where I press the button and the kickstand flips out, because you know it's going to be on the left side, and I'll never be able to catch this thing, you know, coming and going with my prosthesis. So I need to figure out a way where I can either remotely or by hand bring the kickstand up and down. It's most likely going to be by hand. I'm thinking using something kind of like a hood prop with like a tie rod end on it, so it's got a little bit of rotation, and then kind of clipping the rod onto the frame. So when I need it, I just grab it off the frame and you know, use my hand to bring the kickstand up and down. So I'll probably have to mess with different springs and stuff like that to get the tension right, so it's not a pain to move with my hand, but it's also sturdy enough to keep in place. I'm going to go with a different rear hugger. I originally used the front or rear fender off of a pocket bike that I got for free, and it fit perfectly, but I found them online. They're like $30, $40. I'm not paying that much for for something I got to totally repurpose. It's kind of crazy, so I got to figure something else out. Also, some kind of toe clip or a way to kind of keep my leg in place. When I'm taking a left turn, I can't really, I'm not sure how it's going to work to being able to put weight onto my foot to keep it on the rear set. So I was thinking on using just a toe clip, and that should probably be enough support. But I also need to consider, I don't want to just, you know, strap this thing onto the bike, because if I have to bail out on the, you know, if that's possible for me to do, I don't want to have my leg permanently affixed to the bike, because, you know, wherever the bike goes, I'm going with it, and I've done that before and it didn't work out too well. So that's about it. Probably the big takeaway from this list and everything is it really helps to keep things organized. I'm huge on making lists. I make lists for everything, and I've got stuff organized in all these drawers. It's probably really weird seeing this stuff, you know, just in a living room inside of furniture. But, you know, I'm a single dude, and I'm fairly immature, so this works really well for me. So yeah, that's it for now. Thanks again for watching, and you know, hopefully in the next video I'll be able to get a little bit more work done on this thing. All right, everybody, I'll see you next time. Ride safe.